It's a Greenland shark that lives in the Arctic Ocean, and it's likely the oldest vertebrate creature on Earth. The size of this shark and radiocarbon analysis of its tissues, which allow us to determine its age fairly accurately, show that it was born in 1627. You heard right. This particular individual is almost 400 years old. 15 years after her birth, Japan's 200 years of self-isolation will begin. 80 years after her birth, England and Scotland will unite to form Great Britain. 149 years later, the United States of America will be founded. In 162 years, the Great French Revolution will begin. While she is floating in the ocean, in the 19th century, Napoleon's invasion of Russia will take place. Another French Revolution, a gold rush, and a civil war in the United States. In the 20th century, the Great Depression, 2 world wars and 1 Cold War, man's first flight into space and his first landing on the moon, the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl, and the advent of the internet will pass unnoticed. In the 21st century, in her lifetime, the Twin Towers will be attacked. The first iPhone will be introduced. The global financial crisis, the last season of Game of Thrones, and the COVID pandemic will happen. Imagine in the year of her birth the journey from Edo, Japan, that is Tokyo, to London, England, took 6 to 12 months depending on the season and sea conditions. Now that journey can be completed in less than 15 hours, and it takes no more than 1 second to deliver a text message between those cities. Every crazy event in human history over the last 400 years has passed this shark by. Entire empires have been created and collapsed. New continents have been explored, and technology has dramatically changed everyone's life. And after almost 400 years, it's still alive. Wouldn't you like it to be? But some researchers believe the results of the analysis are wrong, and we've made a big mistake in determining the age of this shark. It could be much older. A few years ago, talk of eternal life was not taken seriously in decent society. But today, things have changed a lot, and there are many good reasons for that. Billions of dollars of investment and the efforts of tens of thousands of people are finally lifting the veil on the mystery of aging and paving the way for tools to fight the main fear of man: death. Can you and I live to discover the technology of infinite life? And if we can, how can we prepare for it? And what if mankind already possesses the secret of eternal life? In this video, we will talk about the oldest and the greatest desire of mankind, the desire that governs our entire civilization from its very beginnings, the desire for which rivers of blood were spilled and the most important discoveries were made. The name of this desire is immortality. The first emperor of unified China, Qin Shi Huangdi, was simply obsessed with the idea of eternal life. Twice he sent his court magician and fortune teller named Su Fu on an expedition to the eastern seas to find the Elixir of Immortality. The first expedition took place in 219 BC, and the second in 210 BC. Su Fu never returned from the second expedition. There are many suggestions that he and his army landed on the island of Japan and lived there until his death. It is believed that the arrival of Su Fu gave a boost to the entire ancient Japanese civilization by bringing technology and plants. This is an illustrative example of how the desire for immortality influenced the development of mankind. Literally, our entire civilization is woven from the desire to be eternal. Of course, Qin Shi Huangdi was not the first person to aspire to eternal life. The notion of an endless afterlife probably existed as early as the Paleolithic era. Let me remind you, the Paleolithic is a historical period that began about 2.6 million years ago and ended around 10,000 BC. As soon as ancient man realized his mortality, he immediately experienced the need for immortality, at least in the form of postmortem or rebirth. The burials of Cro-Magnons, who became extinct about 40,000 years ago, show that they consciously performed burial rituals, probably related to the idea of postmortem life. The history of immortality, like human history, is much longer than we tend to think. Sigmund Freud said, "In the unconscious, Everyone is convinced of his immortality. Therefore, magical thinking, as well as virtually all ancient beliefs and religions, contain the idea of immortality. And modern religions are often no exception either. But only today immortality passes from a metaphysical abstraction to a practical plane. Having made its way from ancient magical thinking through religions, philosophy, and psychology, about 70 years ago, this idea took a more tangible form in transhumanism. Unlike religious and philosophical understanding of immortality, which rather seeks an answer to the question, what is immortality? Or at least, how to earn it? Transhumanism cuts off religious meanings and seeks to answer the more practical question, how to achieve it, and preferably achieved on our sinful earth, not in heaven. Although transhumanism is also partly a philosophical movement, it opens the way to thinking about specific directions and technologies. And most importantly, the transhumanism movement is motivating many individuals, as well as entire communities and even political parties, to move toward the realization of these ideas.
Last one, just on a personal note, you are the longest running tech CEO. Is there any end in sight?
Well, as you could tell, I'm sprightly and quite enthusiastic and energetic yet. So I think this is for so long as I believe I could do that. And I don't know exactly how long that's going to be, but 3 or 4 decades, I would say. You know, in another 4 decades, I'll be robotic, and you know, maybe another 3 or 4 decades after that. And so hopefully I'll get to enjoy this for a very long time.
Many scientists, doctors, and CEOs of major corporations are adhering to the ideas of transhumanism and are guided by them in their actions. This is what the American physicist and Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman thought about immortality. If man were to build a perpetual motion machine, he would face a prohibition in the form of a physical law. In contrast to this situation, there is no law in biology that states the obligatory finitude of each individual's life. I would like to note that immortality is not the only idea of transhumanism. Yes, it is one of its currents, which are called immortalism. But transhumanism is in general about everything that expands the physical, psychological, and intellectual abilities of a person due to advances in biology and technology. Biohacking, neuroprosthetics, genetic engineering, cryonics, and even plastic surgery are also considered transhumanist technologies, and some of these technologies have long since become an everyday part of our lives. The term immortality itself is also beginning to transform. In general, immortality can be considered more of a religious term, which symbolizes eternal afterlife without any time limitations. But limitations, at least in the form of heat death of the universe, still exist. That is why in transhumanism the term life extension is more often used. Still, for convenience, you and I will use both of these terms. In transhumanism, it is possible to distinguish the following technological directions: biological, cybernetic, nanotechnological, cryonic, and digital immortality. Each of these strands is strongly related to another technological strand. For example, cryonic immortality involves the technology of freezing the body until technology is available to revive or heal the frozen person. However, such healing is itself part of the technology of biological immortality, or at least digital immortality. Furthermore, each broad technological direction of life extension includes narrower directions. Biological immortality can be either genetic, where DNA editing slows or reverses organ aging, or cloning to transplant those very organs. And digital immortality may require both a virtual model of your brain and an accurate electronic model. And these are two completely different technologies. So let's go in order. Biological immortality relies mainly on the capabilities of the body itself through genome editing, development of new drugs, cloning, and organ transplantation. Hypothetically, it is possible to greatly increase life expectancy or to make it indefinitely long until the body does not die of unnatural causes, that is, not from aging. And some success in this area is indeed. In 2006, Japanese Shinya Yamanaka made a discovery for which he received the Nobel Prize in 2012. It's known as the Yamanaka factors. He discovered a group of 24 protein factors. 4 of them were later recognized as the most important, which can turn adult cells, such as skin cells, back into stem cells using gene therapy. Each formed cell in our body has a specific function or specialty, such as a skin cell or a muscle cell, and stem cells are like blanks of such future cells. They can turn into any other cell types in the body, making them indispensable for tissue growth and repair. Yamanaka factors can reprogram a depleted adult cell and return it to its original stem cell state when it has not yet decided what it will become. This discovery offers new possibilities in medicine, including the treatment of age-related diseases, and there are those who believe in the success of this venture. For example, Altos Lab, which specializes in cell reprogramming, has received investments of more than $3 billion over the past few years, and it is far from the only laboratory with such a specialization, receiving serious funding. And the growing availability of the CRISPR-Cas genome editing method greatly accelerates the entire research process. The question arises, then, why not throw more energy and money into this technology? The thing is, it doesn't make sense on its own. After all, we still don't have a generally accepted agreed-upon theory of aging. We still don't really understand what aging is in principle. Is it just a set of random errors in the cells of the body that accumulate over time, or a specially programmed genetic mechanism? There are dozens, if not hundreds, of types and subspecies of aging theory, and scientists already have a reasonable suspicion that aging is a complex problem that can only have a complex solution in the form of several multidirectional therapies. But so far, most laboratories are working on a single solution, each working on its own. But some people believe that biology alone will not do us any good. Nanotechnological immortality implies the use of nanobots that are injected into human blood and independently repair damaged cells. They can help both in regenerating damage and in removing potentially dangerous cells, such as cancerous cells. By continuously repairing or replacing old cells or even entire cellular structures, they can significantly slow aging or even keep the body young indefinitely. Cybernetic immortality involves the implantation of electronics in machine components. These can range from prosthetic organs such as limbs, kidneys, or hearts to an electronic analog of the brain. Here, too, we can see some advances. Neuroimplants Neuralink from Elon Musk's team just take over partially some of the functions of the brain and central nervous system. This is Noland Arbaugh, the first patient to whom a Neuralink implant was implanted in January 2024 due to a spinal cord injury. He was completely paralyzed below the head. However, the implant allowed him to interact with a computer again, controlling a cursor literally with his mind. Just a few weeks after the implant surgery, Noland was able to play chess games on his computer, and a little later he was playing hours-long sessions of the strategy game Civilization. And finally, he even managed to try himself in the shooter Call of Duty, where with the help of the implant he demonstrated high speed and accuracy of shooting. And this footage was published by Neuralink on August 21, 2024. It shows Alex, the second paralyzed patient with an implant, playing the shooter Counter-Strike 2. Attention, he is playing on the second day after the chip installation. Alex himself describes his experience as follows. Just running is so nice because I can look from side to side, and I don't have to move a special joystick left and right. I can just think about where to look and it moves where I want it to go. It's crazy. Musk himself believes that in addition to helping people with disabilities, and not just the paralyzed, but also, for example, the blind, neural implants could speed up communication between all people. The potential information transmission bandwidth of implants could be significantly higher than the bandwidth of human speech. Right now, our communication speed is not very fast, given that every thought has to be packaged and transmitted to another person, who also has to receive it and unpack it in order to understand the meaning being transmitted to them. And it looks like it is cyber technology that will pave our way to digital immortality. Digital immortality is also often referred to as uploading. Your consciousness is copied onto electronic media and continues to live on as a fully digital avatar or a cybernetic machine in the real world, or both at the same time. As early as 2024, the University of Western Sydney in Australia plans to launch Deep South, a supercomputer capable of modeling human brain networks. It uses neuromorphic engineering that mimics biological processes to achieve 228 trillion synaptic operations per second. This computational speed rivals the estimated speed of operation in the human brain. In fact, this supercomputer is not designed to upload the human mind, but to make computing more efficient. Deep South can process huge amounts of data quickly, using much less energy and being much smaller than other supercomputers. The main thing is that even such a goal as saving energy encourages scientists to study the structure of the human brain and the principles of its operation. Who knows, perhaps these developments will be the basis for the technology of uploading the mind into a machine. In addition to potential immortality, digital life may have a number of other advantages. For example, due to the higher speed of information processing, the speed of life in the digital world can be much higher than in the physical world. While a fully biological human lives one life, a cyborg or digital avatar can live thousands. Judge for yourself. The average speed of impulse transmission in a human neuron is about 120 meters per second. The data transmission speed in a fiber optic network can reach 200,000 kilometers per second, which is about 1,666,667 times faster than in the human brain. Processing and analyzing information in a digital person can also take hundreds or thousands of times less time than in a living person. If a fully virtual world populated by digital avatars is ever built, life in it will be so fast that we will simply be physically unable to keep up with all the changes in it. And when interacting with our reality, for example, through uploading into a robotic body, our pace of life will seem incredibly slow and inefficient to them. Not only can you live forever, you can live much faster, and for many people, that's a very attractive prospect. But if none of the above works in the medium term, that leaves cryonic immortality. This is a technology of deep freezing of the body, or only the brain, so that in the future, if the appropriate technologies appear, it can be resuscitated and returned to full life. The main task here is not to damage the brain structures in the process of preservation. After all, the brain is the most complex and irreplaceable part of the body, containing experience, memories, and personality in general. Its damage during freezing, for example, due to emerging water crystals, leads to the impossibility of recovery, and this is the main problem researchers are currently struggling with. There are other directions, types, and subspecies of technology, but all of them are at the stage of hypotheses, while the technologies we are considering are already being developed in laboratories to a greater or lesser extent. So what is the most promising technological direction for life extension? Transhumanists are betting on everything at once. Something somewhere will shoot up. But most likely, an effective solution will be built at the junction of several or even all these technological directions. Let's take the idea of uploading consciousness for digital immortality. Suppose scientists can make a complete electronic copy of your brain at the current moment down to every neuron and impulse in it. If everything is done correctly, then purely theoretically it will contain an absolutely exact copy of your personality, with all your experience, knowledge, and memories. And yet, it is only a copy, and the original, that is the real you, is still a separate entity. But what if we don't copy the whole brain at once? Slowly and methodically, we will replace each of your biological neurons with an artificial neuron that is impervious to aging and damage. Over many weeks or even months, day after day, we replace all the biological parts of the brain with artificial ones. The question arises, won't you stop being yourself at some point? This is a modern interpretation of Theseus' paradox. The ship of Theseus sailed annually from Greek Athens on a sacred embassy to the island of Delos. Before each voyage, the ship was repaired by replacing some of the planks, resulting in every plank being replaced some time later. A dispute arose among thinkers. Is it still the original ship, or is it another, completely new one? And if all the replaced planks were kept and a ship was built from them, which of the two ships is the real one? If you think about it, it's the same thing that's happening to you right now. Some of your brain cells are dying every minute while new ones are being created. How sure are you that when you wake up this morning, you are the same person who went to bed yesterday? In the gradual replacement of the biological brain with an artificial brain, we will surely need both biological, cybernetic, and nano tools. All this in order to achieve digital immortality. This is why it is likely that all transhumanist directions will eventually work together. So what gives us hope that this will happen not in the distant future, somewhere hundreds or thousands of years from now, but in the near future? And the most obvious answer right now is artificial intelligence. Besides generating funny pictures, songs, and lines of code, artificial intelligence is already being applied in more serious fields such as medicine and materials science. What matters to us now is that humanity may soon have many virtual scientists and bioengineers who can work hundreds of times faster and more efficiently than a live human. Those discoveries that take us 10 years to make could be made by AI agents in years or even months. Terence Tao, professor of mathematics and doctor of philosophy, the recipient of quite a few significant awards, believes that AI is already being used to produce mathematical proofs. And that's good news because everything in our world, including medicine, is ultimately written in the language of math. Biochemistry is part of medicine and studies the chemical processes that occur in living organisms. It in turn is part of chemistry, and the boundary between chemistry and physics is very arbitrary. Finally, physics uses a mathematical apparatus. Physical theories are almost always formulated in the form of mathematical equations. What to say if with the help of one equation it is possible to describe the dynamics of animal population development? Therefore, by achieving automation in mathematics, all other scientific disciplines can get the strongest acceleration. Here's an example. In 2018, DeepMind, which is now Google's flagship AI division, published the AlphaFold algorithm in the public domain. It is designed to predict the three-dimensional structure of proteins based on their amino acid sequence. AlphaFold allows scientists to better understand the mechanisms underlying biological processes, such as protein folding and function. This accelerates the development of new drugs and therapies, as well as facilitating research in molecular biology and genetics. In 2020, the second version of the AlphaFold algorithm showed outstanding results. Prediction accuracy was more than 90%. AlphaFold 2 helped make discoveries in areas such as malaria vaccines and cancer treatments. Finally, a third version was introduced in 2024. According to Google's claims, AlphaFold 3 is able to predict with high accuracy the structure of not only proteins, but also biomolecules. And this, in turn, will change our understanding of the biological world and open the way to the discovery of new drugs. Basically, you've already realized how powerful automation with artificial intelligence is. So even when we solve the problem of discovering drugs that slow aging, we will face another problem. It will take many years to test them. Meet the FDA, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. This organization is responsible for developing safety approvals for drugs and medicines on the U.S. market, and it is probably the most bureaucratic organization in the world. For many companies, passing the FDA inspection means years or even decades of waiting. And for most pharma companies, this approval is the most important as it gives access to the most solvent market in the world and makes it easier to enter other markets around the world. If you're blacklisted by the FDA, you can get banned in other countries. Zolpidem, the sleeping drug, also known as Ambien, was filed for review in 1987 and didn't get approval until 1999, 12 years later. And this Dengvaxia, a vaccine against the dengue virus, transmitted through mosquito bites, was approved in 2015, nearly 20 years after it was submitted for review. But what if we could create an exact virtual replica of the human body, simulating all of its processes, and test virtual drugs on that virtual organism? Would it speed up their vetting and release? It might. But even in this case, the development and implementation of methods for radical life extension will take time. And time is of the essence when it comes to immortality. So what's the plan? The plan is called LEV, Longevity escape velocity. So, LEV implies that new life extension technologies will only give a few extra years of life. However, during those few years, new technologies will be developed that add a few more bonus years to your life. Thus, it is as if you are constantly pushing back or stretching out your aging, and so on until more effective methods of radically or even indefinitely extending life are found. In the last 70 years, the average life expectancy has increased by 23 years worldwide, and it continues to increase. It can be said that each calendar year on average extends a person's life by several months. All of this has been made possible by lifestyle changes, increased quality and availability of medicine, and risk reduction. And here I will draw your attention. This is the average life expectancy. I'm sure you realize that even now, most people are not very concerned about maintaining their health and longevity. And even so, humanity has taken a big step towards longevity. Getting out of the averages and greatly surpassing those numbers is a very real challenge. To live to 90 or even 100 years in developed countries is not a rare case. Of course, accidental death due to reasons beyond anyone's control can never be ruled out. Both a car running a red light and your own genetics can play against you. No one can guarantee you anything. But everyone can significantly increase their chances of longevity. So with longevity escape velocity, modern breakthroughs in medicine, and with the help of artificial intelligence, many of the people alive today have a good chance of achieving a radical extension of life. But is there a downside to immortality? I'm sure there are. What will happen to our feelings, memory, and psyche after receiving additional tens, and maybe even thousands of years of life? Will we be able to remember our entire life? Or will the memory of the past be gradually overwritten, or will the removal of the fear of death change our nature altogether? By the way, if you would like to imagine what problems a person who has lived, for example, for 14,000 years might face, I recommend watching The Man from Earth. Even though it is not a very high-budget movie, and some people will find it boring, but it reveals the theme of extreme longevity quite well, so I recommend it to you. And if you are a gamer and played Cyberpunk 2077, you remember that implants cause cyberpsychosis in some people, a state in which there is no instinct of self-preservation, complete indifference to other people, problems with self-control, and outbursts of aggression. And it is quite likely that something similar can happen to a person who lives significantly longer than usual. After all, evolutionarily our psyche is not yet ready for a super long life, and who knows what tricks it will start to throw out at a certain point. At least at some point a person may experience serious burnout and complete indifference to life. But the notorious problem of overpopulation of our planet may not be such a problem. First of all, when a certain level of technology is reached, everyone will be able to go into space to organize new colonies. And secondly, no one guarantees that in the new circumstances people will want to reproduce at all. In a famous experiment called Universe 25, laboratory mice were placed in ideal conditions for life. They were provided with food, space, and basically unlimited mouse resources. However, it was this that eventually caused the colony, which started with 8 mice and reached 2,200 mice, to eventually die out entirely. The limitless resources, and therefore low threats to life, led to a lack of incentive to reproduce and continue their population. All of this leads to the realization that unlimited longevity may not only be a gift, but a curse to our species, perhaps to the point of total extinction. Or has that already happened? Does the phrase Everett's multi-world interpretation mean anything to you? Those who have heard of it already suspect the creepy nooks and crannies of reality we are about to plunge into. In 1957, American physicist Hugh Everett proposed his own interpretation of quantum mechanics called relative state, now better known as the Everett multiverse interpretation. And to put it quite simply, it implies the existence of parallel universes in some sense. From Everett's point of view, the universe is in an infinite, I repeat, infinite variation of different states. That's right, it's the same story of Schrödinger's cat, where the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. But in addition, there are versions of universes where instead of a cat there is a rabbit in a box, and some where experiments were not performed at all. Some probabilistic versions of universes differ from ours very slightly. In them, for example, on a distant planet, there is only a gram more soil than in our version of the universe. There are versions of the universe where there is simply no life. There are versions where time is a second ahead of our time, and where it's only the 14th century. Any variations and configurations of our universe that are not prohibited by the laws of physics exist side by side, behind the invisible wall of the quantum world. If Everett's interpretation seems inadequate to you, I suggest you think of Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician midwife, who in the mid-19th century identified the causes of the extremely high maternal mortality rate during childbirth. He realized that hand hygiene was the problem. Often doctors would first perform autopsies on cadavers and examine dozens of patients. Then, without washing their hands, they would go straight into labor. In this way, infection was introduced into the women's bodies, causing radical fever and often death. After discovering this, he began to urge hand hygiene and convinced his colleagues that doctors should wash their hands with soap and water before beginning obstetric procedures. Not believing Semmelweis' conclusions and finding his ideas about infection to be the delusions of a lunatic, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where he died. But these are different times, and although Everett's interpretation was initially received with derision, by the 1990s it had begun to be taken quite seriously by many scientists. Moreover, some researchers suggest that a quantum computer works in a similar way, performing its calculations simultaneously in different multi-universes and returning to us with the result. In general, while in one of the possible alternate universes you receive a text message that you are selected for a group to test a new life extension drug, in other realities you have already received an injection of this drug last year. And somewhere your consciousness is being uploaded to a digital cloud or a humanoid robot right now. This assumption is based on a thought experiment known as quantum immortality. It assumes that in the infinite variations of reality states, there are always variations in which you survive under all circumstances, even a direct shot to the head or a nuclear bomb exploding nearby. And a small fraction of those probabilities imply that the circumstances of this universe allow you to exist for a long, long time, and in some probabilities you are simply the last living thing in the entire universe. So there is always a version of you that is alive, and that perceives reality as you are right now. And as long as you perceive reality, that is, as long as you are alive, there is always the possibility that you are exactly in the timeline that by a chain of chance will lead you to a very long life. Quantum immortality cannot be considered immortality in the conventional sense of the word. After all, everything about quantum physics is one big confusing paradox that personally both amazes and horrifies me. And yet, perhaps it is because of this paradox that you are in exactly the version of reality that brings you closer to biological or digital immortality. Now, I'd like to take a little poll. Write in the comments in what year, in your opinion, we will be able to achieve immortality, and what unexpected consequences, negative or positive, can it lead to? I read all the comments and I value every opinion. So what's it look like to me? We may indeed be very close to major breakthroughs, life extension. Think about it. If just 25 years ago you told someone about a device that includes a phone, music player, book reader, TV, game console, satellite navigator, camera and video camera, and even a construction level, and that all this will weigh only 150 grams and lie in the pocket of every schoolchild, you would have been simply raised to laughter. And after you would have added that with the help of this device from any place you could have access to all knowledge of mankind in any format, watch any movie, book the nearest car, instantly send money to a friend, translate a text from Chinese, or even talk to a computer in human language, you would have been sent for treatment. But think about it. It's only been 25 years, and today it's not just a reality, it's commonplace. At a time when literally hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested in medicine, in artificial intelligence and robotics, at a time when everything is accelerating at an incredible pace, it seems that anything is possible. Unlike our ancestors, you and I are fortunate to live right here and in this particular period of history. And I would not rule out that if we take our health and our lives responsibly, we have a chance to become the first people who, if not to live forever, at least for a very, very long time. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us move forward.